Hello everyone, this is part 22 of What If Naruto Wants to Surpass the 9 Tails, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Tenten awoke only a few moments after the foreign presence appeared inside her bedroom, and she wasted no time in hurling the kunai she was gripping under her pillow at it. What a cruel, disrespectful apprentice I have, Naruto's distinctive growling voice rang out, full of amusement and fake sorrow. I come to visit and she throws a kunai at me. But if you want to play, hide the kunai, then I'd be more than happy to oblige you. Narutoshippuden, the weapons user exclaimed and threw herself at her Fuinjutsu master in a hug, ignoring the perverted banter. Fortunately she tended to sleep in shorts and a t-shirt, so she wasn't exactly indecent. The blonde was surprised at the flying tackle, but caught her without any problem. The way that she was clinging to him was a clear indication that the situation had been pretty hard on her. Perhaps I'll get the chance to play with your body sooner than I expected. Xana's voice rang through his head. The leer was clearly audible in her tone. Ignoring the veiled suggestion to seduce his apprentice, Naruto spoke to Tenten instead. How have you been, Tenten? In response, the Kunoichi s her fist on his C, her exasperation getting the better of her. Idiot. You nearly got yourself K and I wasn't even able to come see you, and then top it all off I hear that your girlfriend is the QB. There have been so many rumors going around that I don't even know what's true and what isn't, and now you just show up in my bedroom in the middle of the night and ask me how I've been. How did you get in my bedroom without triggering any of my B-traps anyway? She ranted. Well, Xana is indeed the QB, but she really has no interest in leveling Konoha, and I got into your bedroom by doing something secret. Naruto explained teasingly. Those Horatian seals he had placed on her clothes had been meant as an emergency measure in case she ever needed saving, but it had so far been unnecessary. At least the seals made it easier to say his goodbyes. Sneaking about the village while dodging Anbu would have sucked. The weapons user huffed in irritation, but let it go in favor of asking something else. Not that I'm not happy to see you, but is it safe for you to be here? The village seems pretty on edge over the big reveal of your girlfriend being the QB. Tenten asked with some nervousness, taking a quick look out the window to check if there was anyone there. She had already deduced that the rumors were a load of crap, because according to what she knew, Xana had been seen well over 3 years ago and had so far done nothing. She'd been shocked and a bit scared when she'd first heard, but after she'd calmed down and thought it over, the rumors lost any credence. She didn't really know what was going on, but she was pretty sure that there was no plot to destroy Konoha going on. Quite sure. Nobody can sense my chakra after all, so nobody will even know that I've been here. Naruto answered with a grin. He couldn't suppress his chakra worth S, but Xana could. It was much easier to keep his suppressed than her own since hers was so much stronger, which meant that she was keeping him effectively invisible to the senses of the village. So, dating the QB, huh? How did that even happen? She asked curiously. She wasn't overly upset that he hadn't told her about this before. It was his own business who he told, and he'd probably been trying to avoid this exact reaction from the village by hiding it. It's a long story, but suffice to say that she's a demon in the sack and we're getting married. Naruto answered, his face splitting into a huge grin all by itself. He never got tired of saying that. Tenten went to roll her eyes at the predictably Naruto response, but was left gaping in shock when he mentioned being engaged to be married. Married? Congratulations. She burst out and then asked with some confusion. Were you supposed to congratulate someone if they were getting married to a demon? Probably, she decided. Thank you. He accepted the congratulations, ignoring the confused tone that it was offered in. But anyway, I've come here for a whole other reason. Tenten's eyebrows climbed up her forehead in interest and Naruto continued speaking. I've got presents for you. He said with a grin and unsealed a very large tome that was bound with heavy chains and an odd lock. The lock itself didn't have any keyhole but seemed to be made of interconnected metal plates instead. Tenten accepted the large book, surprised at how heavy it was. The thing was nearly the size of her torso and probably had room for at least 2,000 pages if not more. What's this? Instead of answering, Naruto grabbed her much smaller hand in his own and used the claw on his thumb to make a small C on her palm. Ignoring her small wince and reflexive attempt to jerk her hand away, he pressed the B palm on the odd lock that the book was sporting. When a small amount of her B had been smeared on it, he enveloped both of their hands in a haze of chakra and the metal plates disconnected, allowing the book to be opened. Having by now realized that the lock must have some kind of B and chakra recognition seal on it, Tenten carefully opened the tome, seeing that it was covered in page after page of detailed instructions and diagrams for fuinjutsu of all kinds. It's something that I've had a shadow clone working on ever since our mission to rescue Gaara. I've written down a lot of the things that I've already taught you, along with things I've been intending to teach you, and I want you to have it. The lock is protected with a B-based seal that will instantly teleport the tome back to a predetermined location of your choosing if anyone who isn't keyed into the seal tries to tamper with it. Tenten looked at the huge tome that had clearly been custom made for this exact purpose. The quality of its making easily allowed her to see that it had no doubt been very expensive. It was currently only about half full, but the things that she had seen in it so far made her believe that everything was well worth learning, filled as it was with seals both simple and complex. She had even caught sight of instructions for getting started on space-time manipulation. The book had been written with painstaking detail that most wouldn't associate with Naruto, but she knew how he could get about his fuinjutsu. Narutoshippuden. Thank you, she managed to say, swallowing thickly and feeling a bit overwhelmed by the magnitude of the gift. Fuinjutsu users all over the world would have given an arm and a leg for something like this. I didn't have time to finish it unfortunately, so you'll have to do it for me. He told her with a smile at seeing her reaction. Tenten's eyes snapped up to his at the words, starting to feel a bit uneasy. What are you saying? I'm saying that you're not my apprentice anymore, Tenten. But, she protested, blinking away the stinging in her eyes. Why did hearing that hurt so much? She should be happy that he considered her good enough to end her apprenticeship. I haven't been able to spend as much time teaching you as I would have liked due to various circumstances, which couldn't be helped unfortunately, but you've worked hard over the 3 years that I've been gone, and the Codex of Seals will help you continue your studies until you're ready to call yourself a fuinjutsu mistress. Naruto interrupted her. Tenten had set aside the book by now and went to hug him. There was a cold certainty in her heart that he was leaving, and she couldn't help the tears that came to her eyes at the thought of it. She had never mentioned it to him or anyone else for that matter, but she'd been feeling left behind by her teammates, so when Naruto had offered to teach her fuinjutsu she had jumped at the chance. Now she was equal to their skill and could do things that neither one of them could imagine, and it was all thanks to him. Thanks to him she had become something more than a walking armory. She could have learned fuinjutsu on her own, but it would have been far slower. You're leaving, aren't you? She asked hoarsely when he rubbed his hand over her back soothingly. Yes, I am, he confirmed. The village would never accept the idea of the Kyuubi walking freely among them, and neither me nor Xana are inclined to tolerate their petty hatred. Besides, Tsunade is my friend and I don't want to cause her a load of pointless trouble. When Tenten just grabbed hold of him even tighter, he asked her another question. Are you ready for your second present? You've already given me the Codex of Seals, I couldn't possibly accept anything more. Tenten protested once she got over her surprise at the fact that he was planning to give her another gift. Are you sure about this, beloved? Xana questioned. She was dubious about his decision to do this, but there was no denying that it was his right to do as he pleased with it. I'm sure. She'll make much better use of it than I ever did. Naruto answered back confidently. He would miss it, but he knew that it would be in good hands. The Codex was a graduation present, this I was always intending to give you when we parted ways. It's just a coincidence that you're getting both of them at once, he said to Tenten, dismissing her protest. The weapons user was rendered speechless when he presented her with the kusanagi and held it up for her to take. Shakily she took it but started shaking her head almost immediately after grabbing hold of it. The kusanagi is your sword, I can't accept it, she protested. I'm not a swordsman, Tenten, and I'm doing the kusanagi a disservice by swinging it around like it was an iron bar. It's better off in your hands, you'll be able to appreciate it as more than just a piece of sharp metal. He countered, refusing to take it back when she tried to return it. Her hands dropped to her sides with the legendary blade still in one hand, feeling her traitorous lower lip trembling despite her efforts to control it. Naruto couldn't help but grin slightly at the way her lips were turned into a cute and unwilling pout, despite the fact that he wasn't happy about being forced to end her apprenticeship so soon any more than she was. Seeing that she was just barely holding back from bursting into tears, he gave her another hug and spoke again. I won't tell you all of the Kusanagi's special powers since I'm sure you'll have fun figuring them out yourself, but I will tell you that if you happen to break it, it'll just repair itself using your chakra, so don't be afraid to be rough with it. Tenten nodded against his bare sea and worked to rein in her emotions. As a Kunoichi, she shouldn't be giving in to her emotions like this anyway. You've been a good apprentice, Tenten, and I'm proud of you. I'm sure that in time all of the elemental nations will know you as one of its finest fuinjutsu mistresses and sword users. He said softly and patted her head in a way that had always irritated her in the past. She kept her arms locked around him for a while longer, somehow knowing that once she let go, he would be gone. You're going to need to let go now, Tenten, he said when it became clear that the weapons user wasn't planning on letting go anytime soon. Reluctantly she let go and Naruto gave her another of his usual grins and mussed her hair up even more, causing her to scowl with instinctive irritation, though it didn't look very menacing with her eyes being so puffy. I'll be expecting to hear great things about you, he said, the grin still in place. Goodbye. Goodbye, she answered with only slight break in her voice. He vanished in a Horatian teleportation right afterwards and she collapsed onto the floor and buried her face in her knees, the Kusanagi falling from her fingers to land next to her with a clatter. She had just been given a sword that she had lusted after ever since she had first seen it and a tome that would allow her and any students she might have to achieve near unrivaled skill with fuinjutsu, but she wasn't able to feel happy about it right now. Naruto was almost surprised when AS weapon wasn't thrown at him when he appeared in Sakura's bedroom. Maybe he had just gotten too used to that kind of thing with Tenten. It had been harder than he had expected to say goodbye to the bun-haired weapons user, and he wasn't looking forward to the fact that he still had to say goodbye to several more people. Despite his absolute devotion to Xana, he had still become attached to several others, and he was pretty pissed at whoever had blown his secret and disrupted his plans. He had been intending to stay in Konoha for a few years more at least and be there for his big sister as she settled into her family life and role as a mother. He'd also been looking forward to messing with her by spoiling her child. He'd also wanted to see Sakura, Hinata and Tenten grow up and become adults, all the while seeing if he could corrupt any of them into becoming perverts. Those plans had gone out the window now and there was nothing left to do but say goodbye. Just like Tenten, Sakura and Hinata both had hidden Horatian seals on their clothes that they didn't know about, and Ayami had easily allowed him to put one on her when he had asked, so they were easy enough to get to. Kakashi wasn't a very social guy by nature, but Naruto figured that he should say goodbye to him too, even if the man hadn't really taught him anything much. Jiraiya and Tsunade he also needed to say goodbye to, but they, along with Kakashi, would have to make do with an on-the-run sort of goodbye, because they would probably try to stop him. Quote, he idly wondered how come she hadn't tried making herself a male body before. Oh, I have tried, but unfortunately a chakra construct body wasn't capable of producing sperm and was therefore incapable of a proper. It was merely an exercise in frustration. Naruto firmly ignored what he had just heard. Xana as a man simply did not bear thinking about. Not to worry, beloved, I am far more comfortable in a female body. Sakura had been wincing with every single point he made, knowing that it was all true since she had heard most of those things in the past week. Worse still, she could name several other problems that were likely to crop up if he stayed, but refused any kind of restrictions to be placed on either himself or Xana. So that's it. You're just going to leave and become a missing nin? She asked despondently, saddened at losing her remaining teammate. Naruto sighed and started explaining, even though he really wasn't obligated to tell her anything. You have to understand that Xana is more important to me than anything, but I've kept her true nature secret because I honestly wanted to have more time with you and the others. Once you reveal a secret to someone, even if they don't say anything, there's automatically a bigger chance of it getting revealed. You know that. I guess, she said with a sad sigh. She was really going to miss the damn pervert. When will you leave and where will you go? She asked, hoping that she would still have at least a little time left with him. I'll be leaving sometime before the night is over. I just have say goodbye to the others and a few people first. He said blithely. Who and for what reason? Sakura asked incredulously. Here he was being all peaceful and reasonable about his need to leave, and then his just blurts out that he plans to K people before doing it. Well, the elders for one, since it's kind of their fault that I'm even in this situation, not to mention that I'm pretty sure they were the ones to betray me to Orochimaru and Akatsuki along with a bunch of other crap they've done even before that. He told her easily. Sakura pursed her lips together with indecision. She didn't particularly approve of his plan, but couldn't really bring herself to object either, not after seeing how easily the village had decided that they needed to K him. It might be mildly treasonous of her, but she wouldn't shed any tears over the pushy old fossils if they happened to end up s. Still, she was obligated to inform someone, most notably the Hokage, of things like this, but she wasn't going to. Naruto had shown her a lot of trust by so bluntly telling her this, and she wouldn't him in the back. After all, wasn't Kakashi-sensei always saying that those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash? She thought to herself a bit cheekily. She knew perfectly well that it wasn't supposed to apply for this kind of situation, but she chose to ignore that just this once. It wasn't like he was planning to destroy the village or something, merely removing some people that had been causing problems. And where will you go? She asked again instead of commenting any further. Zana said that she wants to show me a special place, so I don't really know yet. He said happily, making Sakura sweet drop at how quickly he became cheerful just from mentioning the demoness. You sure turned happy fast just from mentioning her. She couldn't help commenting. She did think it was kind of sweet though, even if the relationship itself was weird. She'd have liked to have a guy love her that much too. Don't mind me, Zana just agreed to marry me not long ago and I'm still a bit giddy. He explained, another idiotic grin stretching over his face at the memory. Oh, congratulations, she said, genuinely happy for him. It made her feel better about all of this to know that she wasn't being abandoned by her teammate. He just had to leave so that he could have his happily ever after without the ignorant fools in the village messing it up for him. It was easier to accept if she looked at it from that perspective. Why, thank you. An amused female voice spoke, a voice that was familiar but carried an undertone of power that hadn't been there the last time she had heard it. Slowly turning her head around, she found herself looking into burning red eyes that didn't belong to Naruto. The gold-orange eyes had taken some getting used to, but they were still Naruto's in the end. She could definitely feel that it wasn't her teammate behind these eyes though. Zana-san, she asked, already feeling quite sure that was who had spoken. The compromising position that Naruto had dragged her into suddenly felt a lot more awkward. Yes, it is I. The demoness confirmed, further disturbing Sakura at seeing Naruto's mouth opening but hearing a female voice coming from it. The pinkett tried to scramble away but was once more held in place, so she just gave up on trying to get away and asked a question instead. I thought you were supposed to be free. Oh, I am. Naruto is merely sharing his body with me as a precaution to prevent us from being separated. Zana revealed. There was nothing that anyone could do about it, even they knew that bit of information, so she had no compunction about revealing it. Besides, it would be known soon enough. I see. She couldn't really understand what it would be like to have two minds in one body like that. Inner Sakura didn't count, as that minor mental disorder had been taken care of years ago, but she had to give Naruto due credit for having such absolute faith in Zana that he was able to hand over control of his body without fear. Don't take this the wrong way, but why are you talking to me? Sakura asked nervously. She was trying very hard not to think about the fact that she was speaking to the Kyuubi. I was wondering if you would be willing to help me with something. Such as? Sakura asked, even more nervously. She couldn't think of anything that she could possibly do to help Zana in particular, and the situation was awkward as hell. Quote, Naruto? She asked sleepily, not at all frightened by his sudden appearance. Suddenly it registered to her that he had been terribly injured on his most recent mission. Naruto. The blonde was surprised that Ayami managed to move that fast, what with her bulging s. I'm so glad you're okay. Naruto patted his big sister gently on the back while she hung around his neck awkwardly. It was close, but I got better. Ayami had no intention of letting go of him quite yet, but he felt her arms getting tired and lowered her back down to the bed. As soon as she was laying down again, she realized something. They were in the Inuzuka clan compound and her husband was in the same bed as her. There was no way that he should have been able to stay asleep, being a shinobi and all. She turned to look at his side of the bed, only to see him laying perfectly still, but his eyes were moving about wildly as if he was attempting to struggle but was unable to even twitch. The web of black lines spread about his body provided a clue as to what had happened to him. Naruto, what did you do to Masaru-kun? She asked sweetly. Well, I didn't want him freaking out, so I saw a paralysis seal on him. He's fine, just unable to move. Naruto explained. Honestly, Naruto, was that really necessary? I don't know, that's why I did it. The blonde said with a shrug. You can let him go, I explained everything to him. Ayami told him. I see, well I guess it's alright then. Naruto nodded and released the seal, causing the man to let out a sigh of relief as he felt control of his body return to him. Well, that was unpleasant. Masaru muttered as he sat up and then moved to help his wife do the same. I figured it was better than you screaming B because you woke up to find me in the room. Naruto said flippantly. I would not have done something like that. Masaru protested. Ayami-chan has told us everything and we understand that there is no danger despite the QB being free. Even though Naruto scared him lately, he still trusted Ayami to know better than him what kind of man her brother was. I kind of had to after the way that Kiba blew the secret. Ayami said sourly. Kiba was the one that found out and told everyone about Zana. Naruto asked in disbelief. Of all the people that could have found out, it just had to be a tactless idiot like Kiba, didn't it? That son of a b, I'm gonna kick his teeth in. Calm down, Naruto, he didn't mean for this to happen. Ayami see him off, replacing Naruto's anger with confusion. What do you mean? I went to visit you while you were unconscious and Zana-san didn't bother hiding her tales. Masaru was worried about me and asked Kiba to follow me and keep me safe. He caught sight of her through the window and didn't know what to do about the information. He went to ask Hana for advice and their mother walked in on them. Long story short, the discussion got a bit loud and some of the curious younger pups heard it and asked the older ones. Soon after that the entire clan knew, and you know how loud they can get when they're excitable, not to mention that the story got a bit twisted in the retelling. Several people heard bits and pieces of it from outside the walls and things spiraled out of control from there. She explained. Naruto ran a hand down his face in exasperation. Of all the stupid ways for the whole thing to get blown open. Of course he should have known better. It was always the little things that F you over. The big things, you paid attention to and had countermeasures in place for, but something as simple as a visit from your sister being the catalyst wasn't something you expected to be a problem. I managed to calm the clan down by explaining what the situation was really like, but it was too late to stop the news from spreading. And the entire Inuzuka clan just took your word for it? Naruto asked skeptically. He knew that Masaru wasn't very high on the clan pecking order and he didn't believe that they'd be reasonable enough to actually listen. The Inuzuka didn't seem to be that type of people. It took some convincing, but I think it was mostly the fact that I told them about the fact that Zana-san has been free and at full power for the past 6 years that convinced the majority of them. Nobody could find a good argument as to why the village was still standing if she wished it harm. Though most of them are still wary, they were willing to believe that they aren't in any immediate danger. Ayami explained. Naruto nodded in acceptance, as that sounded plausible enough to him. Done in by a dog of all things. Naruto heard Zana muttering, even though he knew she wasn't all that upset over leaving the village. I'm still thinking of kicking Kiba's teeth in though. He's ruined so many plans just by being an idiot. He said sourly. Oh, leave the poor boy alone, he's been beating himself up over it ever since it happened. He feels guilty for causing this mess for you, especially now that he knows the truth, even though it's not entirely his fault. Ayami said soothingly. Naruto sighed heavily and put his head on Ayami's collarbone, causing the young woman to hug his head. She was right, of course, there was no point in getting mad at Kiba. The young Inuzuka was brash and oftentimes stupid, but he wasn't deliberately malicious. He had only wanted to do the right thing, went for some advice. It was just a textbook case of happening that it led to the rest of Konoha knowing. Mostly though, he was going to let it lie as a favor to Ayami. When will you be leaving, little brother? She asked evenly, having come to the realization that he would be doing so several days ago. Soon. he said without removing his head. This might well be the last hug that he would get to give his sister for a long while. He wasn't surprised that she knew he was leaving. Ayami had always known him well. I see, she said with a sigh, not surprised. I'm going to miss you. I'll miss you too, and it sucks that I won't get to spoil your kid, he said, finally removing his head from her collarbone and gently placed his hand against her s, feeling a light kick from the baby. You'll still visit occasionally with the Hiraishin, won't you? Ayami asked hopefully. Neither she nor Naruto paid any attention to Masaru's stunned look. Of course I will, but it just won't be the same. I know, but it's better than nothing. Maybe you can even bring Zana with you sometime and convince her to let me pet her tails, Ayami said with a small grin. I've been asked to find out if they're as soft as they look. Naruto gave a small chuckle at that and turned his attention to the demoness inside him. Could you please let her pet them? Just this once, I will let someone other than you touch them, beloved. Ayami gave a small surprised gasp when the familiar 9 tails burst from behind Naruto. The surprise soon became delight when they gently wrapped around her. Naruto was just glad that they could pass through his clothes the same way as his chains, otherwise he would have had a huge hole in the back of his pants. They're so fluffy, she exclaimed with a huge smile on her face and rubbed her face into them. Zana gave a sigh that only Naruto could hear as she spoke. Honestly, why is that the most common female reaction to my tails? Because they're cute as hell. He thought back to her, full of amusement. He was grateful to his lover for this though. She didn't lightly let people touch her tails and he appreciated her doing this for him and Ayami. But how can you have the tails, Naruto-san? I thought the Q. Zana-san was no longer in the seal. Masaru asked in confusion. Ayami had completely forgotten about that little detail in favor of cuddling the fluffy appendages, but she was curious as well. She's temporarily back in the seal, just in case someone tries to pull off any stupid sealing again, Naruto explained. Ah, I see, Masaru said while Ayami went back to her tail cuddling. They vanished soon though, which caused the girl to pout slightly. And guess what, Ayami-ne-chan, Zana finally agreed to marry me, Naruto told her, wanting his big sister to know the happy news. Oh, that's wonderful, Naruto, congratulations, Ayami said in a near squeal. She knew how much that meant to Naruto and she couldn't be happier for him. The mood soon turned somber again as Naruto felt that the time was coming for him to leave. He just had to say goodbye to Hinata now and then it would be time to go. I'm really going to miss you, Ne-chan, he said sadly with a heavy heart. There had been a time in his life when Ayami, her father and the vague memory of a woman with red hair that he hadn't known was Zana were the only bright spots in his life. It would be hard to leave her. Tsuki had always been nice and friendly, but it had been Ayami that had insisted on becoming his friend and that meant more to him than he knew how to put into words. I'll miss you too, Naruto, but maybe this is for the best. This village never deserved you. I hope that you and Zana will be happy together wherever you go. Ayami knew that Naruto would be alright as long as he had Zana with him and she was content with that. When she had first met him as a hungry, tired and soaking wet 7-year-old and befriended him, she hadn't understood how hard his life was. He had skittishly come by the Ichiraku ramen stand a few more times before he felt sure that he was welcome and then he became a regular fixture there. At least until he saw that his presence was driving away the other customers. He'd started staying away out of guilt after that until she had finally managed to convince him to come by at least once a week. He had been such a sweet and considerate boy once. Even young as she had been, it had been obvious to her that her blonde friend wasn't doing well. He seemed to be more tired and listless every time she saw him. His suddenly focused behavior one day when he was 10 years old had confused her for quite a while until he had explained to her about Zana. Despite the strangeness of it, she had been glad to see that Naruto had at least stopped slowly sinking into despair. It wasn't that every individual in the village had made it their life's work to make Naruto miserable, but many had perpetrated minor cruelties against him. Unfortunately, those minor cruelties had been great in number and had only a small handful of good things to offset them. Though she also suspected that Naruto had kept some of the worst things hidden from her because he didn't want to worry her. Once he had met Zana, he had gotten better. No doubt knowing that someone who didn't hate him was always with him and taking care of him had blunted the pain of being almost universally rejected by the village. Perversely, the fact that she wasn't human had probably only made this more acute, as his only positive contact with humans were Ayami and her father. It saddened her whenever she thought about what kind of man Naruto might have become if only people could have seen him as just another boy instead of the hated Kyuubi Jinchuriki. It wasn't that she disliked the way he was now, but she could tell that there was a dark edge to him as a result of his harsh childhood. He was a good man for the most part, but she didn't miss the vindictive amusement he had gained from frightening the villagers with his intimidating size and appearance. All in all, Ayami hoped that being out of the village would allow him to spend time with the woman he loved and just relax. He was long overdue to just sit back and enjoy himself for a while, in her opinion. Naruto blinked in confusion at the sobbing form of Hinata that was pressing herself into his sea and leaving rather large amounts of snot and tears on it. He didn't mind all that much, but he was deeply confused as to why her reaction was this extreme, not to mention troubled. He'd understand relief and maybe even some waterworks, but this was quite a bit excessive. He turned a bewildered gaze on the nearby Neji, who had been sleeping in the same room for some unknown reason. Am I missing something here? Grimly, Neji explained what had been happening in the Hyuga compound during Naruto's unconsciousness. Apparently Hiashi had been playing a delicate balancing act for years, trying to keep both of his daughters equally eligible for the position of clan heiress so that neither one of them was branded with the caged bird seal. The revelation of Xana's true nature had impacted negatively on Hinata due to his association with her, and she had fallen out of favor in the eyes of the clan elders, which was why she had recently been branded and consigned to the branch house. That hadn't been the worst of it though, as Hinata was too strong to be brought down by something like that. The worst part of it was all the backstory that Hiashi had revealed to his daughters and Neji once his plans had been ruined. Sometime before his brother had Hiashi and Hisashi had apparently reconciled the differences and decided that they would find a way to remove the caged bird seal from the Hyuga clan entirely. Hisashi's after the F-up with the Kumo ambassador had damaged those plans but not ruined them. The ruin had come from the fact that the clan elders had caught wind of it and started using Neji's life as leverage against Hiashi, leaving the man as clan head only as long as he didn't do anything that went against the elders. Left virtually powerless, the man had acted the model of a perfect Hyuga clan head while doing what he could to protect his daughters. He had guessed that Neji and Hinata had the same idea of getting rid of the caged bird seal and helped them get all the notes for it, seeing a possible way out of the predicament. The sudden chaos in the village when Xana's true nature had been revealed had caught the Hyuga clan just as off guard as it had everyone else, but the clan elders hadn't lost any time in taking advantage of it. Hinata had ended up with that seal on her forehead before Hiashi could even try to interfere. The elders had apparently taken a liking to being in charge and had no intention of ever loosening the grip, their idea being to use Hanabi as a figurehead clan leader or having her married off to someone of their choosing, using Hinata as a hostage the entire time. When they intended to pass this method of control onto their children instead of letting control of the clan go back to a single clan head. The only reason they were even bothering with all this subterfuge was because Tsunade would be able to involve herself if it ever got out just how bad the situation was, and nobody really wanted that. It would probably lead to the Hyuga being greatly reduced in number as the elders used the branch house as either hostages or forced them to fight against any Konoha shinobi attempting to interfere in clan business. Naruto privately also suspected that neither side wanted their image damaged in the fallout, but that might also be his bias against the clan talking. Neji had taken to spending all his time around Hinata to prevent her from attempting anything rash, as the former clan heiress had been morose and depressive ever since. She'd had such high hopes of healing her family once the seal was removed, but seeing how corrupt and power-hungry the majority of the main house was, it became obvious that there was no hope of that happening. The fact that the main house consisted entirely of the clan head's family and the descendants of the elders probably had something to do with that. Her worry for Naruto's well-being also hadn't made things any more bearable. Either way, Neji was worried that his cousin would attempt to harm herself in some kind of foolish effort to prevent herself from being used as a hostage. Nothing would pain Hinata more than to be used against her loved ones like that. Though he continued to gently pet Hinata's hair to calm her down, Naruto's lips peeled away from his teeth in a silent snarl. He couldn't claim to care much about the Hyuga clan in general, but he cared for Hinata and for Neji to a considerably lesser extent, which was why he had even agreed to break down the caged bird seal for them. Truth be told, He had always found the Hyuga main house pathetic. Their reliance on a seal used to eat the rest of their family as a method of control was a sign of weakness if ever there was one. Nothing but a crutch used by the greedy to grasp at power that was beyond them. Hinata was the obvious exception to his scorn, as she despised the seal and he didn't know Hanabi and Hiashi personally to make a judgment about them, but after what he had just heard, he figured that they probably weren't too bad even though they were too uptight. Well, I'm already leaving the village, might as well make a real spectacle of it. He thought to himself. Your intentions are causing me to fall in love with you all over again. Xana thought to him, her approval and excitement clear. While they were joined together this way, his anger bled over to her and roused her B. She was quite eager for the coming S, and the fact that the target so richly deserved it made it all the better. Before he could get to the K though, there was one final thing to do. Come on Hinata, look at me. He said softly, despite the violence simmering just beneath his skin. Hinata had calmed down considerably during Neji's retelling and had stopped crying by then. When she pulled away from Naruto's sea, she found his right hand to be curled into a claw and his chakra being formed into a complex seal of some sort. He pressed it to her forehead, causing her to feel dizzy. You did it, Neji breathed in awe. You've removed the seal. Yes, now come on, it's your turn. Naruto told the young Junin and readied another releasing seal in his hand. Neji eagerly presented his forehead and Naruto wasted no time removing the cursed seal on it. As soon as the dizziness left her, Hinata was once again sobbing into her big brother's sea, though this time it was in happiness, while Neji just rubbed at his clear forehead as if he couldn't quite believe that the seal was finally gone. Now what? The elders will not take kindly to this. Neji warned once the initial elation passed. He knew that he was one of the Hyuga clan's better combatants, but if he tried to fight then the elders would either K the other branch house members or force them to fight him. Don't you worry, I'll be taking care of everything. Neither of the two Hyuga missed the menace in that one sentence and instantly understood that he wasn't intending to leave anyone alive that might end up causing problems later. But Nisan, you can't. If you do that then you won't be able to stay in the village. Hinata pleaded. I won't be able to stay in the village either way, little sister. Now that everyone knows that Xana is the QB, we'll never have any peace in Konoha. The main house Hyuga won't make any difference to my situation. He said dismissively. The only thing that this changed was the fact that Kiba blowing the secret no longer mattered. True, if Kiba hadn't blown it, then this might not have happened, but it appeared that it would have happened eventually anyway. But Hinata tried to protest further. Not even she was good-natured enough to care if he K the main house at this point, minus certain people of course, but she didn't want him to leave. I'm sorry that I'll be leaving you at a time like this, Hinata, but this was the only choice for me ever since the secret was revealed. We're a bit pressed for time right now, so you'll have to talk to Tenten, Sakura or Ayami if you want more details. He see her off gently, giving the girl a one-armed hug. Here Neji, take this. He handed the young Junin a skull. Instructions for removing the seal. Give it to Tenten and she'll be able to learn how to do it in about a week or so. Neji accepted the scroll with great care and secreted it about his person. He would deliver it to Tenten personally to make sure that nothing happened to it. He wasn't happy that Naruto needed to leave either, but he understood. When your own village tries to K you was long past the point when you needed to leave. It was debatable whether it was even fair to call Naruto a missing nin since he was the one betrayed. Well, that would be the case if he wasn't intending to commit AM. It's best if you stayed out of sight, no sense in you two getting blamed as accomplices. He told them and prepared to move out. Thank you Nisan, and goodbye. Hinata said with a small, sad smile. She was sad to see him go, but could see that his mind was made up. She was honestly a bit surprised at herself that she felt nothing but relief at the thought of the rest of the main house being K but didn't worry about it. They had finally revealed themselves to be the diseased limb that was destroying her family, and sometimes you had to amputate a limb to save the whole. Don't mention it, little sister, after all, that's what big brothers are for. He said to her with a toothy grin and left the room. The grin dropped away from his face as soon as he was alone, well sort of alone, since he still had Xana with him. Saying goodbye to all the girls he had gotten attached to had been much harder than he had expected, and he hadn't been in a good mood even before hearing Hinata's story. Now however, He was downright pissed off. The Hyuga elders clearly hadn't gotten the hint, but nobody messed with his girls. Did they honestly think that he wouldn't retaliate just because they were Hyuga? Hinata was such a cute little sweetheart that he honestly couldn't understand how anyone could even bring themselves to dislike the girl, much less hurt her. But of course, these were Hyuga. Their pride was clearly more important than trifling things like the life and happiness of a sweet young girl. Well, let's see if their pride will do them any good against my claws. He thought to himself with a sense of anticipation, fingers making cracking noises as he flexed them to loosen them up. There was a thrum of approval from Xana, and he knew that she was just as eager to see B spilled, though probably for different reasons. The demoness simply liked to see the undeservedly arrogant being brought low. Stopping not very far from Hinata and Neji's room, he crouched to the ground and used a chakra-enhanced claw to carve an intricate seal into the wooden floor. When it was done, he s his thumb into his palm and filled the seal with his B. For now it was dormant, but he could activate it at any time. That particular seal would render all bearers of the caged bird seal unconscious in a large radius, while simultaneously blocking anyone from activating it unless they could overpower his chakra, something that he very much doubted any living human could do. Imagine his lack of surprise when he discovered that the Hyuga barely understood the cursed seal they were using. There was so much more to it than a simple mark used for T or as a switch. Whoever had created that thing had been truly skilled with fuinjutsu, though they were clearly a piece of S as a person. Someone who truly understood the seal could have used it to literally brainwash the seal carriers into eventually becoming willing S. That was the whole point of placing the seal on the young. If used as it had obviously been intended, the seal would have caused pain or pleasure in response to certain thoughts, in the long term causing a conditioned way of thinking. Obviously, pain would be caused upon sensing any anger or bitterness directed at a certain target, while feelings of devotion or protectiveness would be rewarded with pleasure. Naruto suspected that the original creator of the seal had intended to be the only one not carrying it, but had ended up being the victim of some kind of sneaky betrayal. Moving across the well-kept grounds and towards the somewhat more opulent building where the main house members lived, Naruto was surprised that he hadn't been noticed yet. So much for the all-seeing eyes of the Hyuga. The two board guards at the gate didn't even twitch as he moved across the yard, though he figured it was only a matter of time before one of them activated his Byakugan and saw him. That was actually the reason he had visited Hinata last. He'd known that there was a high chance of getting spotted. On another note, the blonde was of the opinion that separating the clans so blatantly did nothing but make it easier to locate his targets, but he wasn't complaining. Silently, he opened the Parian screen that served as a door into the building. All very traditional. Now, Naruto wasn't much of an expert on traditional buildings, but his sense of smell was telling him that there was someone old in a nearby room. Those Parian screens were rather permeable to the air and easily carried the scent to him. Once more silently making his way into the room, he beheld an older man sleeping soundly in a very traditional futon. The pained eyes locking onto his own in horrified realization just before his were rather satisfying though. The last thing he did was to tear off a fistful of the man's sleepwear and then used it to wipe off the mess that Hinata had left on him with her crying. Hinata blushed in embarrassment as she and Neji saw Naruto wiping at his sea with their Byakugan. Neji simply smirked in amusement. Neither one was at all upset to see the elder S, as this happened to be one of those who had always been particularly insistent with his speeches about the superiority of the main house and what the proper place of the branch house was. Naruto had just made his second K when the guards outside activated their Byakugan and noticed him moving out of the room with his hands soaked in B. Intruder. Uzumaki is in the main compound. The response was instant as everyone jumped to their feet, main and branch house alike. With a sharp-toothed smirk, Naruto activated the seal he had put down earlier, causing it to remotely activate every caged bird seal in a radius larger than Konoha. With every single branch house member disabled and protected from any further use of the seal, he moved onwards. There was still Hyuga to K. It hadn't taken very long as the main house only numbered about 15 or so. The fools could have run, but they were apparently too proud to do so. Or perhaps they believed that they could stop him. Or maybe they'd realized that running wouldn't help. Either way, there was now only two of them left aside from Hiashi and Hanabi. The young girl was hiding behind her father, clearly terrified by the towering man with the scary eyes and hands dripping with B. She might be a genin already, but the monstrous chakra presence and air of danger she could sense around him made her feel as if she would for the slightest wrong move. Hiyashi was hiding his worry well behind a blank mask, but there was also a calculating gleam in his eye as he saw that the blonde was keeping his stare fixed firmly on the other two occupants of the clan meeting hall where the four of them had taken refuge. The other two main house Hyuga were standing stiffly and their faces might as well have been carved out of wood. They smelled of fear and confusion. That was rich, they didn't even realize the reason why they were going to S. One of them was an older man with gray hair and the other was a beautiful woman in her 30s whose face looked as if it spent too much time bearing a hard expression. Why are you doing this, Uzumaki? The older man questioned, hiding his fear well. I thought that was obvious, you hurt my little sister, so I'm going to kill you. Naruto answered blandly as he moved across the hall with deliberate slowness. You are referring to Hinata? The woman asked, not quite managing to hide her confusion. She appeared unable to understand why he would do such a thing. Who else would I be referring to? If you are angered that you can no longer use her position as clan heiress to your advantage, then there is no need. You may deal with us directly. The older man said, utterly certain that this was why the Uzumaki had befriended the Hyuga failure. He was too strong to fight, but perhaps he could be bargained with. In fact, this might all turn out to be in their favor. With the rest of the main house he and his daughter could take sole control over it and coming out of it squeaky clean in the eyes of the village thanks to Uzumaki's K-spree. Now all they needed was to find out what Uzumaki wanted in exchange for Hiyashi and his unmarked daughter. My name is. It doesn't matter what your name is. Naruto interrupted frigidly, never stopping his slow advance across the room. You'll be in a minute anyway. Both the man and his apparent daughter appeared taken aback at this turn of events and didn't know how to respond. They couldn't understand this absolute dismissal of them to the point that he wouldn't even hear the names. Hiyashi understood though. Uzumaki hadn't befriended his daughter because he had any ulterior motives or wished to use her position, he had simply seen something in her that he liked. The blonde had clearly invested considerable emotion into his bond with her and now that someone had done her harm, he was going to end them. It was all very simple, but the elder and his daughter simply didn't understand what possible reason there could have been for befriending Hinata if not to use her. Stop. If you come any closer we will use the caged bird seal to kill Hinata right now. The older man threatened, seeing that negotiation was impossible. I wonder how you're going to manage that when I've already removed Hinata and Neji's cursed seals. He retorted with a nasty smile, still advancing and deliberately making his footsteps loud instead of silent. Their faces paled as they realized that they had no leverage, but they tried anyway, latching onto the fact that he had only removed those two seals. Nobody saw Hiyashi's briefly surprised and hopeful look before he covered it up again. Then we will kill the rest of the branch house. Surely you must care what happens to them if you bothered to create a method to remove the seal. The woman said hurriedly and placed her hands into position to make the hand seal that would her threat. Hiyashi looked grim but changed his expression to blank once again when Naruto responded. Go ahead and try it, I dare you. There was a low rumble resonating from his sea while he prowled closer to the two scared Hyuga the same slow way that a predator would move towards cornered prey. Their faces now full of cold sweat, they tried to do just that, but found that something was blocking them. Seeing that Naruto was nearly upon them with his B hands flexing as if in anticipation, the woman's calm broke and she charged into the attack, thinking that if she could just surprise him, then she could get in a critical hit. Her father called out to her not to do it, but it was too late. She struck directly at his heart, going for an instant K. The Juoken strike was perfectly and struck accurately. Naruto made no move to defend himself as the woman moved and allowed her a perfect shot at him. She let out a shaky breath of relief at having K this dark demon that had decimated the main house. Things could go back to normal now. That was a nice tap, you should have been AM. I'm sure you could have attracted a lot of clients, especially if you gave happy endings. The mocking words snapped her out of her premature relief, realizing suddenly that her Byakugan had not revealed any of the usual signs of a successful Juoken strike. Her tea was grabbed in an unbreakable grip and she was left choking a considerable distance off the ground. Let her go, the old man demanded, automatically sinking into a Juoken stance, but making no move to attack. They had all seen what had happened. Naruto's chakra was simply so dense that the Juoken only caused a minor disruption, but didn't penetrate deep enough to do any kind of real damage. It would take a sustained barrage of Juoken strikes in the exact same spot over an extremely short period of time in order to break through the powerful chakra shielding him. Either that or a single Juoken strike of immense power, power which no Hyuga had ever been capable of mustering. They had always been a clan that relied on precision instead of force, but that did them no good against someone with such a powerful passive defense. In other words, Uzumaki Naruto was virtually impervious to their attacks. You want me to let her go, do you? Is that because she is your daughter or because you still had some use for her? Naruto questioned idly, tightening his grip deliberately to make the woman choke and desperately try to draw in air while she flailed around in his grip. Xana's ability to sense negative emotions had already informed him that this woman was a pit of petty malice and lust for power, so he felt no guilt over his treatment of her. Incredibly useful thing, this negative emotion sensing ability of hers. Because she is my daughter. The man managed to force out, becoming ever more distressed at seeing her struggles weakening. Oh, so you are capable of caring for someone, but can't appreciate the fact that others, people better than you at that, have the right to live freely and without fear. Naruto said disdainfully. Please, let her go. The man pleaded. Instead of responding, he jerked his hand to the side, breaking her end with one hand and then let her corpse drop to the ground. The elder shouted in grief and ran towards his daughter, but was intercepted by an overpowered kick that sent him flying through the paper-thin walls to crash into the stone wall around the compound. He had probably been S before he stopped moving. It wouldn't do to leave these two alive to cause trouble later. Just because the man cared for his daughter didn't mean that he wasn't and that deserved to S, and the same went for the woman. Through his bond with Xana, he felt feelings of approval and lust directed at him. Sometimes he still got a bit thrown by the random things that turned her on. Letting out a rumbling exhale and cracking his N, he turned his gaze towards Hiashi, causing the man to stiffen and Hanabi to whimper. If you intend to K me as well, I would only ask that you do not harm Hanabi. Hiashi said stoically. He was no match for the Uzumaki and he knew it. The blonde might as well have been squashing flies for all the challenge the main house had presented to him. I've made enough orphans today and Neji told me what you've been trying to do. Indeed, there had been 2 young children born to the main house recently. He had knocked them unconscious and hopefully they were too young to remember anything. He'd been sorely tempted to spare the parents, but he had sensed the same corruption in them that had been present in the rest of the main house. An arrogant self-enlament just because they were main house Hyuga, with very little redeeming qualities. There was no point sparing them if they were just going to pass that on to their children. At least, that's what he told himself to feel better about it. Hiashi relaxed slightly in relief. Despite the bee that had all but destroyed the main house, things could have been far worse. Hopefully now the dream of his wife and brother could finally be realized, a united Hyuga clan without either main or branch houses. Could I ask you for a favor then? Hiashi asked cautiously. Neji already has the instructions for the removal of the caged bird seal. Tenten will be able to perform the removal once she studies them. Naruto said, anticipating what the request would be. I see, thank you Uzumaki-san, Hiashi said with a respectful bow. Sure thing Pops, now I've got another set of elders to K before getting out of this village. Naruto waved off the gourd, making sure to be as impolite as possible about it. These Hyugas seriously needed to get that pole removed one day. Hiashi was nonplussed by the response, Grodd warring with irritation at being referred to as Pops, not to mention the fact that Naruto so bluntly admitted to his intention of continuing with his spree of M for a while longer. Naruto was long gone by the time he composed himself again. Hiashi contemplated informing the Hokage or someone else about Uzumaki's intentions of K the elders but decided not to in the end. He'd never liked them and if the blonde was leaving the village anyway then Hiashi certainly wouldn't stop him if he wanted to remove those pests on his way out. Back in his apartment, Naruto sank into a brief bout of thinking to calm himself down. He didn't feel up to continuing with his M intentions just now. He hadn't expected there to be any children in the main house when he had started K them and it had thrown him badly off kilter. In retrospect, it had been stupid of him to think that things would turn out in a way that would allow him to simply ess the entire main house without guilt. Had he done the right thing by Kay the parents? Certainly they had been bad people, but maybe they could have changed, especially once the cursed seal was removed from all the branch house members. It didn't feel right to deprive children of their parents and make orphans of them. Remember what I taught you. There is no right or wrong, only actions and their consequences. Xana's voice echoed soothingly through his mind, derailing him from his guilty thoughts. Taking a deep breath, he considered it from that perspective. He could have left the parents alive, but what would have been the consequence? They would still know the controlling hand seals for the caged bird seal, and that would continue to be dangerous until Tenten could remove it from everyone. They would more than likely be bitter about their loss of position, and the children would have been affected by that one way or another. They would likely be hated by the former members of the branch house, so the chance of them becoming good people was low, because people who are hated want to lash out. Especially if those people fully believed that they were in the right. As for the consequences of them, the children were left orphaned, but were too young to have been taught to consider the branch house inferior. They were unlikely to be hated, seeing as they had only just started speaking judging by their ages. To top it all off, they were part of a clan, so they would have support, and Hinata was sure to feel responsible for them and look after them. She was a sweetheart like that. There was a good chance that those two children would hate him when they were told how their parents had but that was to be expected. Nodding firmly to himself, Naruto decided that the consequences of the parents were preferable to the consequences of letting them live. He sent a wordless feeling of appreciation to his lover for helping him with his moral dilemma. He could always rely on her to have good advice. He would regret the need for the harsh decision, but not the act itself. People like that did nothing but cause problems with their selfish need to be superior to others, so there was no good reason to spare them. Feeling centered once again, he pulled on his left glove, now fingerless thanks to the claws, but left his right hand bare. Those space-time gloves didn't react well to chakra expressed through the hands, which is why he hadn't been using them lately. He wasn't planning to use anything huge that would require the use of both hands to manipulate though, so he was free to use one glove at least. It was time to finish things off with Konoha. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.